What happens when one of country music's most beloved stars sits down for what should be a routine promotional interview, only to find herself defending not just her career, but her entire family legacy? Today we're diving into the explosive confrontation that had Wynonna Judd walking off the Today with Jenna and Friends set, leaving producers scrambling, and viewers at home witnessing one of the most uncomfortable moments in morning television history. This isn't just about a celebrity having a bad day. This is about years of pain, frustration, and family trauma boiling over in real time. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story has layers you won't see coming. It started like any other morning at Studio 1A. Wynonna Judd had arrived early. Her signature red hair, perfectly styled, wearing a flowing black blouse that somehow managed to look both elegant and rebellious. She was there to promote her latest album, a deeply personal collection of songs that she'd described in previous interviews as her most vulnerable work yet. The plan was simple: a 20-minute segment with Jenna Bush Hager and her rotating panel of co-hosts, some light banter about the music, maybe a story or two about life on the road, and then a performance of her new single. But from the moment Wynonna settled into that familiar interview chair, something felt off. Jenna's usual warm demeanor seemed strained, almost forced. And the questions that followed weren't the softball inquiries that most guests expect during morning television appearances. "Wynonna, your new album deals with some pretty heavy themes." Jenna began shuffling through her notes with an unusual nervousness. Loss, addiction, family dysfunction. Some critics have said you're exploiting your mother's death and your family's struggles for commercial gain. How do you respond to that? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Wynonna's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained steady when she answered. "Well, Jenna, I think anyone who knows me, anyone who's followed my journey, understands that music has always been my way of processing pain. When Mama died, I didn't know how else to deal with it except through song. This isn't exploitation, this is survival." Jenna nodded, but there was something predatory in her expression, like a hunter who'd caught the scent of wounded prey. "Some people are saying that you've made a career out of being the troubled daughter of Naomi Judd. Your struggles with weight, with relationships, with your half-sister Ashley's Hollywood success. At what point does sharing become oversharing?" The color drained from Wynonna's face. This wasn't the interview she'd been promised. Her publicist had assured her this would be a safe space, a friendly conversation to promote the album. Instead, she was being ambushed on national television. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here," Wynonna said, her voice taking on an edge that any fan of the Judds would recognize. It was the same tone she'd used when defending her mother during their most turbulent years together. "I came here to talk about my music, not to be psychoanalyzed on morning television," but Jenna wasn't backing down. If anything, she seemed emboldened by Wynonna's discomfort. "The thing is, Wynonna, your personal life has always been part of your brand, the comeback kid, the survivor, the one who persevered despite all the family drama. But now that your mother's gone, now that you're the last Judd standing, so to speak, are you worried that without that dysfunction, without that pain to mine for material, you might not have anything left to say?" The studio fell silent, except for the low hum of cameras and equipment. Even the crew members, hardened professionals who'd seen their share of uncomfortable moments, seemed to sense that something was about to explode. Wynonna leaned forward in her chair, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests. "The last Judd standing," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you just say the last Judd standing?" "I mean, with your mother's passing, and Ashley focusing on her acting career and activism, you're really the only one carrying on the family musical legacy," Jenna said, seemingly oblivious to the storm she was stirring. "My mother didn't pass, Jenna. My mother killed herself. She took her own life because she couldn't live with the pain anymore. And sitting here listening to you reduce our family's tragedy to some kind of marketing strategy, I'm starting to understand why she felt so alone." The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Jenna's co-host, who'd been silent up until this point, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The cameras kept rolling, but you could feel the tension radiating through the television screens of millions of viewers. "Wynonna, I didn't mean to," Jenna started, but Wynonna cut her off with a raised hand. "No, you know what? You did mean to. You and whoever produced this ambush knew exactly what you were doing. You think because I'm grieving, because I'm vulnerable, right now, that makes me an easy target. You think you can sit there in your perfect little television studio and dissect my family's pain like it's some kind of entertainment. Wynonna stood up from her chair, her tall frame imposing even in the bright, cheerful setting of the morning show set. The microphone pack clipped to her blouse crackled with feedback as she moved. I've been in this business for over 30 years, and I've seen a lot of things. I've been through addiction. I've been through heartbreak. I've buried my mother and watched my family fall apart. But I have never, in all that time, experienced anything as cruel and calculated as what just happened here. Jenna was scrambling. Now, her media training kicking in as she tried to salvage what was rapidly becoming a public relations nightmare. Wynonna, please, let's just take a breath here, Jenna said, her voice taking on that overly calm tone that television hosts use when they're trying to control a situation that's spiraling out of their hands. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. Why don't you sit back down, and we can start over? But Wynonna wasn't having any of it. She remained standing, her presence filling the small interview space like a storm cloud ready to burst. Start over! Start over! Wynonna's voice rose, and for the first time, viewers could hear the raw Kentucky accent that she'd spent years softening for mainstream audiences. You think you can just reset after what you said about my mama? After you called me the last Judd, standing like I'm some kind of sole survivor of a plane crash? The co-host, a younger woman who'd been hired for her social media following rather than her journalism experience, finally found her voice. Maybe we should go to commercial, she whispered to Jenna, but the microphones picked it up, broadcasting her suggestion to the entire viewing audience. Oh no, Wynonna said, turning her attention to the co-host. Don't you dare go to commercial. Don't you dare try to hide what just happened here. You want to talk about my family's business on national television? Then let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. Wynonna began pacing in the small space between her chair and the interview desk, her movements sharp and agitated. You want to know about dysfunction? You want to know about family drama? Let me tell you what dysfunction really looks like. Dysfunction is watching your mother battle mental illness for decades while the industry that made millions off our voices pretended not to notice. Dysfunction is having every family fight, every personal struggle, every moment of pain turned into tabloid headlines and television segments, just like this one. Jenna was frantically looking off camera, presumably at her producers, but they were in uncharted territory now. This wasn't a wardrobe malfunction or a technical difficulty they could quickly fix. This was live television at its most raw and unpredictable. Wynonna, I understand you're upset, but we're live right now. And Jenna started. But Wynonna wheeled around to face her directly. I know we're live, Jenna. That's exactly why I'm not sitting back down, because for once, for the first time, in 30 years, I'm going to say exactly what I think without some publicist or manager or record label executive telling me to smile and play nice. The country star's voice cracked with emotion, but she pressed on, her words coming faster now, like water bursting through a dam. You asked me about exploiting my mother's death. You want to know who exploited my mother's death? Every single person who knew she was struggling and said nothing. Every industry executive who saw the warning signs and chose to look the other way because the Judds were still selling records and concert tickets. Every journalist who wrote stories about our comeback tours without asking why we kept breaking. Up in the first place, the studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming through the ventilation system. Even the camera operator seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or look away from such a private moment playing out in public. My mother called me the night before she died, Wynonna continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. She called me and she said she was tired. Not physically tired, but tired in her soul. Tired of pretending everything was okay when nothing was okay. Tired of being Naomi Judd, the survivor, the comeback queen, the inspiration to millions. She just wanted to be a woman who was hurting, but nobody would let her be that. Jenna's professional composure was beginning to crack. Whatever she'd expected from this interview, it wasn't this level of raw honesty and pain. And now you sit here in your pretty studio with your perfect hair and your media training, and you ask me if I'm worried about running out of material now that she's gone? You want to know what I'm worried about? I'm worried that her death won't change anything. I'm worried that the same industry that chewed her up and spit her out will do the same thing to me. I'm worried that in 5 years, some other host on some other show will be asking some other grieving daughter the same heartless questions you just asked me." The co-host tried again to intervene, her voice shaky and uncertain. "Wynonna, maybe we could talk about your music instead. Your new album, it's called Healing Highway, isn't it?" Wynonna let out a bitter laugh that had no humor in it whatsoever. Healing Highway. You know what that title really means? It means I'm still trying to find my way out of the wreckage. It means that even after all these years, after all the therapy and the treatment programs and the spiritual journeys, I'm still looking for a road that leads somewhere other than pain. She turned back to Jenna, and there was something different in her expression now. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with something that looked almost like pity. "But you wouldn't understand that, would you, Jenna? You've never had to worry about whether your pain was authentic enough for public consumption. You've never had to smile and perform your trauma for strangers who think they own your story because they bought your records." Jenna made one last attempt to regain control of the interview. "Wynonna, I want you to know that wasn't our intention today. We brought you here because we respect your artistry and your journey. If the questions came across as insensitive, that was never our goal." "Your goal," Wynonna repeated, shaking her head. "Your goal was ratings, Jenna. Your goal was to get me to break down on camera so you could have a viral moment for your social media clips. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted." Wynonna reached down and unclipped the microphone from her blouse, the sound of the plastic clasp echoing through the studio speakers. But here's the thing about breaking people down for entertainment. Sometimes they don't break the way you expect them to. Sometimes they break forward instead of backward. Sometimes they break into something stronger. She placed the microphone on the interview desk with deliberate care, as if it were made of the most fragile glass. "Wynonna, please don't go," Jenna pleaded, finally standing up from her own chair. "We can talk about this. We can work through this together." But Wynonna was already moving toward the edge of the set, her long black blouse flowing behind her like a cape. She stopped just before reaching the cameras and turned back one final time. "Work through this together," she said, her voice carrying a tone of disbelief that cut through the studio air. "Jenna, you don't even know me. You've never called to check on me after my mother died. You've never asked how I'm really doing. The only reason I'm standing here right now is because your producers thought my grief would make good television." The co-host, clearly out of her depth, made a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "But Wynonna, your fans are watching. They love you. They want to hear from you." Wynonna's expression softened slightly at the mention of her fans, but the steel never left her voice. "My fans? You think my fans want to watch me get ambushed and humiliated on morning television? My fans have been with me through addiction, through heartbreak, through every ugly chapter of my life. They don't need you to exploit my pain to feel connected to me." She took a step closer to the cameras, speaking directly into the lens as if she were sitting in each viewer's living room. "If my fans are watching this, and I know some of you are, I want you to know something. This isn't who I am. This anger, this hurt, this isn't the woman who sang Mama, He's Crazy with My Mother all those years ago, but it's the woman I've had to become to survive in a world that thinks trauma is content and grief is a marketing opportunity." Jenna was frantically gesturing to someone off camera, probably trying to get the producers to cut to commercial. But whoever was in charge seemed frozen by the unprecedented nature of what they were witnessing. "You know what the saddest part is?" Wynonna continued, her gaze moving between Jenna and the cameras. "My mother would have handled this better than I am right now. Even at her lowest points, even when the depression was so bad she couldn't get out of bed, she would have found a way to turn this into something beautiful. She would have found the grace in this moment that I'm clearly lacking." "Wynonna, you're not lacking anything," Jenna said, and for the first time, her voice carried what sounded like genuine emotion. "You're hurting, and that's understandable." "Don't," Wynonna snapped, pointing a finger at the host. "Don't you dare try to therapize me now. Don't try to make this about healing or understanding or any of that talk show psychology garbage. You created this situation. You brought me here under false pretenses and then tried to dissect my family's tragedy for entertainment. Own that." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the crew members had stopped moving, creating an eerie stillness in what should have been a bustling television studio. "I've spent my entire career being told what to say, how to say it, when to smile, when to cry, when to be vulnerable, and when to be strong. And you know what that got me? It got me a front row seat to watching my mother destroy herself trying to be everything to everyone except herself. Wynonna's voice broke on the last word, and for a moment, the armor she'd been wearing throughout the confrontation seemed to crack. She died believing that her pain was only valuable if it could inspire someone else. She died thinking that her worth was tied to her ability to overcome, to rise above, to be an example. And here you are, 3 years later, asking me the same questions, expecting the same performance. Jenna opened her mouth to respond, but Wynonna held up her hand. I'm not my mother, Jenna. I don't have her grace or her ability to find light in the darkness. What I have is a voice, and today I'm using it to say what she never could. Stop turning our pain into your profit. Stop making our worst moments into your best ratings. Stop pretending that exploitation is empowerment. The country music legend took one more look around the studio, her eyes taking in the cameras, the lights, the crew members who were all staring at her with a mixture of awe and discomfort. I came here to talk about music. I came here to share songs that helped me survive the worst period of my life. Instead, I got ambushed by someone who thinks grief is a good angle for a morning show segment. She started walking toward the edge of the set again, but paused when Jenna called out to her. Wynonna, wait. Can we at least end this on a positive note? For your fans? Wynonna turned around one last time, and when she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. You want a positive note? Here's your positive note. I survived. Despite everything that's happened, despite losing the most important person in my world, despite sitting through this travesty of an interview, I survived. And tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll keep surviving. Not because it makes good television, but because that's what my mother would have wanted. She unhooked the battery pack for her microphone from her belt and set it down on the nearest table. And for my fans who are watching this, remember something. Your pain is not content. Your struggles are not entertainment. Your healing doesn't need to happen in public for it to be real. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. With that, Wynonna Judd turned her back on the cameras, the hosts, and the entire Today Show production, and walked off the set. The click of her boots against the studio floor was the only sound as millions of viewers watched one of country music's biggest stars refuse to play. By the rules that had defined her career for 3 decades, the cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing Jenna's stunned expression and the chaos of the crew trying to figure out what to do next. It was raw, unscripted television at its most uncomfortable and most real. What did you think of Wynonna's decision to walk away? Was she right to call out the show's approach, or should celebrities expect tough questions when they appear on television? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more stories about the moments when celebrities stop playing by the rules and start speaking their truth.